Chris Newman coming here to talk about wellness research.
Yeah, maybe that. So this is Startup Meetup, and we invite regional startup folks, whether they're brand new, a couple of years old, or they just got the startup mentality and then exited multiple companies, like our friend Michael Phelan from Step One. So we've had a lot of interesting people, and it's all driven through the community. So thanks for coming, and thanks for making referrals, and thanks for speaking. And next week we have Eamon Gallagher, who's kind of a startup attorney. Ben?
Yes, he is. He works in Philly, and he's going to be talking about cultivating an ecosystem through legal startup advice.
After that, Morgan Berman, who started Milk Creek.
Yeah, it's a sustainability app for people in Philadelphia. So like urban living meets sustainability mobile app.
Okay. And then a women's health entrepreneur, Molly Hayward.
She is created similar to Kimberly Fink. She created a kit that she curated box, but this time it's for feminine hygiene. And she also has a Tom Shoes model, so for every box that she sells in the States and Philly, she also will give away one in a developing country. So,
okay. So social entrepreneurship. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, we have Night Owls, which is from 7 to 10, and we do similar stuff, chat about our startups, projects that we're working on, work with other people, do whatever you want. If you need a space to kind of just think, you can come and do that. It's like therapy. I'd like to say thank you to the sponsors of this event, which include the Economic Development Council of Chester County, Igniter TV, which is that guy, Sean Dominski, who's live streaming and who has live streamed dutifully almost everyone. I think when he had twins, we let him off the hook. 1 week. 1 week. And he texted me to say, I can't make it. I thought that was nice. And Fox Rothschild, who provides legal counsel, great legal counsel. And honestly, from what I hear, they do it a lot across the startup spectrum in the area. So kudos to them for kind of bolstering the whole ecosystem that is now extending out to Westchester. We also do co-working, and we have an incubator, so ask me any questions later, or get my card and we can chat about it, or talk to Ben. That's Ben Bach. And
last week, if you want, you can tag us, and I'll keep it going.
If you have any questions, you can tweet to Ben. We've got a second camera guy, Mike Luder-Moser from 23 North Digital, that works out of this space, and he does a little vignette. So the whole thing will be on YouTube when it's over, and then we'll have that vignette done by the end of the day.
One last thing, Bob had a huge B round recently, and if you guys have any questions about that, or just questions in general, I guess try to save them for the end.
The structure is some content, and then Q&A. And then after, if Bob can hang out for a few minutes, we can ask him questions, or feel free to drink the rest of our coffee, hang out, and talk to whoever. So let's give a round of applause for Bob Moore from RJ Metrics, who has been running a startup since 2009, at least the current one, and you're up to 75 people?
85.
85. That's hard to kind of comprehend, as I have a team of about 10. So I'll come back up after you're done with some content. I'll facilitate Q&A.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. This presentation that I'm going to go through is not entirely about RJ Metrics. It's more about kind of the last 10 years of my life, starting in college and drifting through what I did before RJ Metrics and the decision to start it, and then some of the lessons learned in building it. I was telling Ben before, there's a way I can do this in 30 minutes. There's a way I can do it in 2 hours. I'm going to give you guys the 30-minute version for your benefit. I do want to keep some time at the end for Q&A because I'm sure you'll want to focus on particular areas. So. Just like a who is this guy thing, thanks for the intro. Yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of RJ Metrics. We're based in Center City. We're an emerging leader in cloud business intelligence, and we've got about now 85 people. And we've raised just over $20 million from top-tier VCs almost entirely on the West Coast. I'll talk about that a little bit. Prior to that, I worked at a venture capital firm called Insight Venture Partners. And before that, I studied operations research and financial engineering at Princeton, along with computer science. And I do all kinds of other weird stuff. I'm on an improv team at Philly Improv Theater. If you're ever in the city, come check us out. Love doing travel, love running. Big fan of hip hop music. So let's see here. If we can. Just a quick note on RJ Metrics. We have had a lot of luck over the course of the last couple of years, and one thing happens really consistently when we get to meet people that are in our industry. It happened when we had the mayor come and do our ribbon cutting a couple of months ago in our new office. He gave this great speech about, hey, RJ Metrics, very exciting, et cetera, et cetera. And then after the speech was done, he pulled me aside, and I get like my 30 seconds with the mayor, and he says, so, tell me what it is you guys do exactly. And that's like, my grandmom asked the same question. It's like this challenge that we always have. Is like nobody really gets it, which is fine. It is not only is our product complex, the space that we are in is like this data soup right now, where every single person seems to have a data-related startup. What we are doing is building a product that we sell almost exclusively to marketing departments at online businesses. So if you operate on the internet and you sell something, so that's e-commerce, software as a service, marketplaces, travel, virtual goods, you've got all this data about the people and populations that interact with your business. So that's data in your shopping cart, data in your social media channels, data in your marketing automation solution, et cetera. We have a system that will combine all that data, take it out of all these data silos, and put it in one cloud-based data warehouse, and then provide you with a front end where you can go in and ask and answer questions using that data. We have a lot of prefabricated questions and dashboards and things that you get right out of the box, but at the end of the day, it's a platform, and that allows people to build things to help get more types of data in, and also build things to do more interesting things with the data on the other end. And we just really facilitate making sure that everybody's data gets in one place and helping them get started in terms of analyzing it. So this is by no means a talk about things I've done right. That would be a super boring talk and probably a relatively short one. There's a lot of stuff in here that is kind of more on the screw-up side of the universe, which is always the more fun stuff. This is decisions that, whether through luck or design, have shaped my career, and I'll just one per year for the past 10 years. I guess that's 11 years technically. So in 2004, so at this point, so I graduated from Princeton in 2006. So in 2004, I was a rising junior. This was the summer after my sophomore year. And my freshman year, I had taken an internship actually out here in the suburbs of Philly, near King of Prussia. And I was commuting from my hometown of Glassboro, New Jersey. So it was like a 90-minute commute each way. I was making no money, but I wanted to work for an entrepreneur. So I met this guy named Jim Lesser, who had a business that had some deals with Dave & Buster's and built like custom video games and things. And I took this job. I learned a ton. Jim was awesome, but it was like a great thing to do for one summer and not necessarily two. It was very, very low level. It was exposure to how an office environment runs, but I wanted something more. And I had just learned how to actually write code in a meaningful way during my sophomore year. So what I decided to do was basically take the summer off and spend one of my last free summers actually building something. And at the point in time, if you remember this era, like a bunch of things were happening at once. DVD players were like everywhere, so the movie Rounders had just like come out on DVD and it was really huge. This guy named Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker. I think it was in 2003, and that was, if you turned on ESPN2 at any point in time, you would see poker happening, and it would typically be the tournament that this guy won, and it was like a guy that walked in off the street whose name was Moneymaker and ended up winning this big tournament. So that, and the third piece of the trifecta, which I don't have an image on here for, is that the FTC had not yet cracked down on online gambling. So it was very, very easy for people to get their money online, play a bunch of online poker, and then get their money out without having to worry about all kinds of banking and tax consequences and everything else. So I spent this summer and I built this thing called the Miraculator. This is the beginning of a trend of me obnoxiously naming companies after myself. This was basically odds calculation and play recommendation software. So you would put in how many people were at the table, what cards you had, and any of the cards, the community cards that had come out, and it would give you the probability distribution of all the outcomes. So it would tell you your likelihood of winning the hand, basically. And it combined all these things from all these different classes I'd been taking. And I got super lucky because I had some first mover advantage. It was this moment in the market when I didn't necessarily analyze the market and say, I think there's a big opportunity here for poker. What happened to me was I liked playing poker. Like, I just kind of fell in. I was among the early adopters on that larger trend, and that allowed me to start developing early. And there was this moment in time where no one had any software out there like this. And you could go, and Google Ads were relatively new as well. AdWords had not been around for too long. I could buy odds of poker, how to win at poker, poker advice, poker strategy. I could buy clicks for 10 cents a pop on there and sell this thing for 30 bucks a download. And this is when I fell in love with software, because it was insane margins. It was a downloaded tool. I programmed it once, and every single time somebody downloaded, basically during my junior year, I would wake up and check my email. 5 people download, I just made 150 bucks, which was crazy, which rolls us into 2005. Yeah, right. So I'm back at school, and I'm like, I'm not rich, right? This is not like a retirement fund. It's not even, like enough to pay a year's tuition at Princeton, but like, I am like campus rich. Like, I'm making a couple $100 a day just by doing nothing. So I've got all the winning spoils of war at that time. I've got a Razor phone. I've got a nice big fat back TV, all the Wawa hoagies I want to eat. And it started getting some attention. So, there was some press about it and things like that, which helped in terms of basically expanding the opportunity for me to grow this thing. So this guy, Jim Lesser, that I had worked for my freshman year, calls me up on the phone because he saw this stuff in the press, and he says, hey, I know this guy. He owns a company that actually manufactures handheld devices, and I think that I should sync him up with you because you should take your software and put it into a handheld. And I was like, ka-ching, right? This is me in 05. I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'm getting into like actual retail products now. And then I got the deal, which was that I would do a lot of work and I would not make any money. And I had never negotiated a deal, but I also really just wanted to do this. I wanted to go through the experience of doing it. So I attempted to negotiate 3 or 4 times, and every single time they just said no. And then I sent back a signed contract. So I signed up for it. I said, all right, let's get this thing done, because otherwise, this particular venture is kind of winding down. Like the poker thing was kind of fading. So I spent months like managing a team in China from my dorm room to basically translate this Java code I had written the summer before into this very low-level assembly language that could run on this really tiny processor. So a lot of this stuff, I had used a lot of brute force before, where if you think about the number of outcomes in a poker hand, there are fewer and fewer potential ones as the game gets played. So on a desktop PC, I could actually literally calculate every single possible outcome, millions and millions of them, in a couple of seconds. On this thing, which had like a 2 megahertz processor in it, I had to adapt everything and build out these things called Monte Carlo simulations that basically simulated outcomes and get within a range of statistical confidence that this was the breakdown of whether or not you would win. But this thing got produced. It was a real product, the Sharper Image licensed it from these guys. So this thing started appearing in the Sharper Image, they sent me out to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas as a senior in college, which was like one of the greatest things ever. I got to like man this booth, and yeah, punchline. Nobody bought this thing. Think about this for a second. You're sitting in a poker room and you're gonna like pull out a handheld device and like, hold on guys, I'm gonna win this based on my merits alone. Yeah, like no one bought this thing, and good for them. So I, at the end of the day, got $0 in royalty payments out of this this thing. But they put up, they lost money, and I had nothing to do with this. But coincidentally, Sharper Image went bankrupt a couple of years later. I certainly didn't help the case. Okay, so we're in 06. So we're in my senior year here. Slide. And now there's like social pressure. So I knew that I wanted to build a software company. I knew that I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. This is like the era of the banks will never fail. Everybody's making a ton of money. Mortgages. And all my friends were out there like landing straight out of college, healthy 6-figure jobs at all these amazing places like Lehman Brothers. And there was so much social pressure to go and interview for these jobs. So I said, okay, I'll do some on-campus interviews. I don't have to take anything I don't like, but at least I'll understand what the opportunities are. And I did about 10 of these interviews. Classic consulting firm style, how many golf balls can you fit in a 747? Talk to me about the Black-Scholes model. And they would get to the entrepreneurship on my resume and say, like, I don't understand why you didn't go get an internship at like a mid-level investment bank your sophomore year. And I was like, well, I made 10 times more money than I would have, and I got to build a business. And it just like did not translate. Like it didn't connect with these guys. So I didn't like them. I assumed they didn't like me. So I did meet these guys at Insight Venture Partners, which came to campus and presented. And the job opportunity there was basically a glorified sales job where my job was to sell money. And it required not only the ability to pick up the phone and call entrepreneurs and get them to talk to you, but to figure out and assess whether their businesses were interesting enough to potentially warrant a venture capital firm investing in them. And a firm like Insight really was one of the pioneers of this outbound deal sourcing model, which is now used by basically every venture capital firm that's out there, even really early stage ones, where there are a bunch of people proactively reaching out to companies. And it sounds weird. You always think of venture capitalists as having a line around the block of people that want to come and apply for money. But in reality, it's extremely competitive as a venture capitalist. There are a lot of firms out there that can offer deals to the companies that are smoking hot that everybody can see and can find. The trick is, what's that one company that's out in Omaha that is, doing $100 million in sales every year and kicking $20 million of profit into the owner's bank account, and that no one is talking to because they don't even know that it exists. Like, if you have a team of analysts that can find deals like that, you can do really, really interesting things and have a successful fund. And that's been the secret sauce for Insight. And they've had a phenomenally successful couple of years. I spent my time at Insight learning how to sell, learning about all these industries, expanding my network. And the downside would be this is not entrepreneurship. And there's always this concept of golden handcuffs where you end up in a job like this and it pays well and it's kind of comfortable and like not quite what you want to be doing, but just interesting enough. But I decided to go for it and pull the trigger because I didn't have, the poker thing didn't have enough legs to really like build a real business on. I didn't have a team, I didn't have an idea. I decided to go after it and take the job. So what happened there was, this is in this era where data storage is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as time goes on. And a lot of these companies were looking at investing in have a ton of data, so much that you can't analyze it in just Excel anymore. So my role kind of evolved from like business analyst to data analyst. And I started working on more and more venture capital deals where we needed to analyze these companies to figure out what the valuation should be and whether or not we wanted to do the deal at all. And we needed to like write SQL queries. And I happen to have a computer science background, not where they hired me, but I was able to go through this data. So it was pretty exciting because my job was not one that really existed before. I start helping the firm and the companies we're investing in answer these questions like, who are my most valuable customers? Where do they come from? How can I get more like them? Et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the day, the firm was able to make smarter investment decisions and the companies were able to grow faster because they knew the answers to these questions, which was a really exciting thing. So rolling into 07, we are basically doing this really interesting thing at Insight where like if you're really, really good at your job, you find deals and you get deals done. And at the end of that, the big like climax of that experience of any given deal relationship is, metaphorically speaking, you sit down at a table with the entrepreneur and you slide a check for like tens of millions of dollars across the table and you say, congratulations. And you can only do that so many times before you start to think that like you're on the wrong side of the table, especially if like that's not your money going out. So you can only take so so much, and I had gone into this expecting to do entrepreneurship, so I was always looking for these opportunities, and I came up with an idea for this company called SmartRaise while I was having a talk with my old math teacher. I had seen a lot of companies at Insight that were not really venture investable. They were like lifestyle businesses that weren't growing super fast, but had like $1 million in revenue, kicking $500K of profit into the owner's bank account. Classic like 4-hour work week style companies. A lot of them were in the affiliate marketing space. The idea for SmartRaise was help nonprofits and local organizations fundraise by having a platform that they can build like an online shopping mall for their organization with just one click, and then it can basically funnel dollars from retailers via affiliate fees to these nonprofits, and then the company just takes a cut for kind of the hosting and management of all that, and everybody wins. So I decided to start a company on the side while I was doing my job full time, and that company was SmartRaise. I had no time, I had no money, I outsourced everything to the cheapest possible offshore vendor that I could find. Great decision, sarcasm. Things got really painful really fast. I was a developer who wanted technological control and had none. And it was actually developed in a language that I had never worked with before. So I'm like learning Visual Basic.net, in the 2 hours a week that I'm not working. I wasn't sleeping. I was like getting sick all the time. I was doing a bad job of my regular job and my job on the side. And this starting a company on the side thing was really painful. SmartRaise got off the ground, and we actually got like hundreds of organizations signed up relatively easily, but the unit economics were crap. So the average group had 10 active members. They buy one thing a month on average at a $40 AOV. That gross commission is 2%. I split the commission 50-50 with the charity, so you're getting $48 per year per group. So if you think about that, in the first year I got 500 groups, which I was like, that's amazing, but revenue was about 20K, and I was burning cash, which was more or less money that was like coming out of my paycheck every week, just to keep things open. But there's this thing that happens that I'm sure a lot of you have experienced where you've got like ego invested in this thing. Like I had told my friends and my family, and at Thanksgiving dinner I'm talking about this thing, and if I let this thing go, there's this kind of crushing like admitting defeat thing that I really should have done but decided not to do, and instead said, hey, what can I do to save face, make it continue to be this business but somehow change the economics of the situation. So I took SmartRaise and turned it into Donor Loyalty Corporation, and invested in a very different logo, as you can see. This time what I wanted to do was something a little more lean startup-y, and I said, okay, I've got all these captive nonprofits, I can go and talk to them. I found like the 5 or so biggest ones out of the SmartRaise universe, and I said, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go to them and say, look, we're not just this affiliate marketing shopping mall. We also do all kinds of other stuff. We can build your mobile site for you. We can do like a CRM system for your donors. We can help with text messaging notifications. We can do data analytics on like who your most valuable donors are and how to get more donors like them. We can help you understand your web traffic, things like that. So I hit the slide. If after all these meetings, every single one of them said, I would not pay money for any of those things. Sorry, Bob. Except for that data analysis thing that you were talking about. That is kind of interesting. And they want to know, like, who are my most valuable donors? Where do they come from? How can I get more like them? This should look familiar. This is exactly the kind of analysis that I was doing during the day at Insight to help the venture firm make better decisions and help companies make better decisions. And now it works for nonprofits too. And what I had done is stumbled into this universe of business intelligence. Now, it's certainly not a new industry. In the 80s and 90s, a whole generation of enormous companies came together to basically solve the problem of the data silos that existed in the enterprise specifically. Hit the slide. And they sold to the biggest companies in the world. Slide. During that time, in parallel, what was happening was that the amount of bandwidth that existed out there was growing and growing and growing, and things were moving onto the cloud. Slide. So you get this absolute mess. So this is actually outdated. This is the mess as of 2012. You can watch this universe of SaaS companies grow and grow and grow. And what ended up happening here is that whereas back in the 80s there were 10 applications that a big business might use, and they'd spend $1 million on each one, and you'd have these 10 data silos. Now we've got these companies where it costs so little to get a business off the ground that a very, very vertically focused piece of marketing automation software or piece of shopping cart software can exist and thrive, and you can have a real company going. So you get this insanity. Every single one of these is something that's got some value to some small to mid-sized business. They're long tail. And we knew, or I knew starting RJ Metrics, that there was a $13 billion market in just selling business intelligence to the Fortune 5,000, to the biggest companies in the world. And that market still exists today. But there's this other enormous opportunity, just like that cloud of cloud-based software companies had disrupted and supplemented the universe of traditional enterprise software companies that lived at the head of that curve and pushed its way down the long tail. Business intelligence would follow in the cloud, just like business intelligence had followed in traditional enterprise software. And that was the potentially enormous opportunity. But this was something that would not be a lifestyle business. This would not be a, hey, it's successful if you're making $1 million by doing it. So the decision was basically take Donor Loyalty Corp and pivot into business intelligence. Not even a pivot. This is a complete restart. I threw the entire code base of SmartRaise away, and I decided to pursue this thing full time. So here we are in 2009, and there's this interesting thing where, as a venture capital firm, you kind of you start to romanticize businesses that look a particular way, not necessarily because they're the best businesses in the world as optimized for the entrepreneur, but because they're really good venture investments. So, profitable, high growth, okay, that's great for everybody. Not having taken any outside capital, working in enormous markets, and you really start to demonize things like lifestyle businesses, companies that raise money early on, companies that grow more slowly, because you would never invest in any of those businesses. So you're kind of conditioned to learn that they're inferior. And we had this opportunity to raise a bunch of money on day one, and we decided not to. I'm probably oversimplifying that. It would have been hard to raise money. I think we could have gotten it done because we had worked at a venture firm. If we had really scraped and clawed, I think we could have gotten the partners at that firm to personally invest a couple $100,000. But we decided to prove to ourselves that this was actually a good idea for us. So we raised no money whatsoever. We decided to bootstrap the business. We can hit that slide. And we left New York City for Camden, which actually, Camden was really good to us. And this is actually us in my attic in Collingswood, New Jersey. My co-founder, Jake Stein, started at Insight on the same exact day that I did. All that nerd data analysis stuff that I was doing, he was tearing it up on the phones, the actual job we were supposed to be doing. He was an excellent salesman, amazing at getting people on the phone and kind of talking to them about their businesses. And it was kind of a classic I build it, he sells it paradigm. Both of us took $5K out of our personal savings accounts and put them in the business bank account, and that was it for funding the business. We learned some things along the way there. Among them, like confusing lean with cheap is something that is a very, very common mistake. Building MVPs is lean. Getting into fights about whether you should buy the box of 50 paper clips or 500 because there's a $2 difference is cheap. It's a false economy. There's all kinds of experiences. You can read on my blog. I blog about this stuff on the New York Times Small Business blog a lot. If you look for the column's called The Data Boss, I talk about a lot of this stuff. And being lean and versus cheap is pretty common. So we're rolling into 2010. We're bootstrapping the business a little bit. And we're starting to sign up some real customers. So Bonobos and Threadless and Warby Parker. We never signed up diapers.com, but we got an opportunity to talk to Mark Lohr, who was the founder there, on the phone. And I remember this was still, we weren't even in Camden yet. We were still in my attic in Collingswood. And Jake and I were huddled over a speakerphone and talking to this guy and kind of giving the pitch. And we are about 2 minutes into it, and we mentioned the price, which at the time was $500 a month. And Mark Lohr, who is now a billionaire, who Diapers.com is part of Quidsy, which got acquired by Amazon, which is a very successful unit for them. He said, I'm going to stop you right there. First of all, I'm never going to buy your product. Second of all, I want to let you know that when you call a guy like me on the phone and you tell him that your product costs $500 a month, I'm going to assume that it's a total piece of crap. I built this myself for Diapers.com, and I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars getting our own internally developed system. And you're telling me that what you can deliver is comparable to that, and you're charging me a couple $100 a month. Either you are an idiot or you are lying to me. And either way, and based on the fact that I built this already, it's a no-go. But I hope that's helpful advice. Click. And it was helpful advice. It was extremely helpful advice. And those are those no's are so much more valuable than the yeses. And I think with a lot of these clients, we really were pushing our technology really early on. But we had revenue, which was great. So at the end of 2009, we had gotten to a point where we were profitable, we were putting cash in the bank, and we were still not paying ourselves. So profitable relative term, opportunity cost considered. But we decided to start hiring people before paying ourselves. We put up this job description. We decided to hire a programmer. We said we wanted a user experience and interface engineer. What we really needed was an engineer who was better at engineering than me. And this guy, Chris Merrick, through a friend of a friend, applied, and he showed up and he said, look, I'm a terrible user experience and interface engineer, but I am a really strong engineer. And we interviewed him and really talked to him a lot about the product, and he was hands down the best candidate that we found. And we kind of changed up our strategy around hiring for a specific role that early on, and decided we wanted to hire somebody who was clearly an A player who could push us. Chris Merrick today still is our VP of engineering and runs our entire engineering team. And the first thing that he said when
I don't know what happened.
Oh, it's trying to join the Wi-Fi. There we go. So the first thing that he said when he showed up after having been interviewed and getting the job and moving down here, he had been in New York. He said, look, you guys are really, really lucky that I'm awesome because your interviewing sucks. You guys didn't ask me any technical questions. You kind of danced around some things, and we talked about infrastructure, but actual coding skills, you've really seen nothing. So, Chris really took over the hiring, recruiting, feedback systems, very frequent, in-depth feedback, and that's still a big part of our culture to this day. So we started building, this real technology organization with all this stuff that should be table stakes, but because we were in MVP mode where I was personally writing every line, it just hadn't been there before. So this is us in Camden. That's Bill Peel, our second hire. So we're start hiring more and more, which rolls us into 2011. There's a lot of unfortunate stuff in the press about Camden. The part of town that we were in was perfectly nice, but the question is, when you start hiring in mass, does this stuff hurt your ability to hire? And the answer for us was yes. We suspected that Camden might be the reason. We had a bunch of job descriptions out there, mostly for engineering. We weren't getting a ton of applicants. And the question, though, is everybody talks about how hard it is to hire engineers. So how do we know that Camden actually has anything to do with it, as opposed to it just being difficult, generally speaking? So the solution that we decided to do was just lie and pretend that we were in Philly. So we put up a job description that was identical effectively to our Camden job description, but we put in a fake Center City address. This is the Camden one and this is the Philadelphia one in terms of applicants over a very similar time period. So we started interviewing these 69 people, and we found a couple that we liked, and we gave job offers. And it was it's kind of awkward getting them to come to Camden for the interview, but we kind of dodged our way around that. Meanwhile, we started looking for space in Philadelphia, and by the time the first person was hired here, their first day at RJ Metrics was our first day in Center City, Philly. It was January 2nd, 2011. So in that year, we grew from 4 to 12. started hiring people that weren't engineers, so analysts to help like implementing clients and doing customer support, which Jake and I had entirely been doing up until that point. And one of these people had sales experience, and we let him sell because Jake was getting kind of overrun with leads, and we realized that we've been leaving some money on the table, which takes us into 2012. So this is how the unit economics of a SaaS business work. At least a lot of SaaS businesses, particularly ones that are selling at a higher price point, which is for us, if you think about the lifetime of the customer relationship, on day one, we've never met them. So, we haven't spent any money. As time goes on, we offer a 14-day free trial process. So as you move forward there down into the red, you're talking about you're paying for marketing costs to acquire the lead. You're paying the salesperson to actually sell and get the person the deal closed. You're paying someone to implement them and get the software all set up. You are paying to actually host the code. They've got a 14-day free trial, so hopefully as they bottom out here, they actually start to pay you and you start recouping those dollars. And the real question and this is referred to as the J curve. Some people might talk about it like the S curve because eventually they'll stop paying you and it kind of S's out. So if you can get this down to a predictable science and you know what this J curve looks like, then you can feel really good about investing money in acquiring new customers because there's a predictability around your payback period on that. But the question here is, what's this gap between day one and when you actually break into customer profitability? You pull the S1s for HubSpot, for Box, for Zendesk, for any one of these SaaS companies that have filed to go public over the course of the last year or so, you'll find that their ARR over CAC ratio, which is basically a reflection of how big that gap is, it's for any given customer, how much you'll make in the first year divided by how much you spent to acquire them, basically, tends to be less than 1, which means that this thing is more than a year. So it takes more than a year to get paid back. For us at the time, in early 2012, our ARR over CAC ratio was 8.1, which meant that we were profitable, extremely profitable by the time they made their second monthly payment. That may sound great, like, oh, fantastic. You guys are really crushing it with the old unit economics there. But the reality is, it's really, really dumb because it means that you're leaving a ton of opportunity on the table. If that could get pushed down to 2, we'd be profitable in 6 months, and we would be acquiring way more customers because we'd be investing more money, we'd be casting a wider net to bring in more potential business, and still feeling good about having a business that at the core is exceptionally profitable. And again, the benchmarks are like actually less than 1 there. So if you think about what that means for a business like ours that was profitable at the time, imagine that you've got a 12-month payback period, which is well within like the best practices window. And you're growing at more than 100% a year. So if you're doubling every year, then at any given moment, exactly half of your customers are less than a year old. And if you're not profitable yet on customers that are less than a year old, then you are definitionally burning cash. Next slide. So we decided to raise capital to grow faster because we were in a position where we knew we could put $1 out and get more than $1 back in at a return rate that was higher than the cost of capital would be. And the terms really sucked. We ended up doing when we started talking to actual venture firms about structuring a round, as opposed to a convertible note. So a convertible note structure kind of gets you the money now, the dilution later, hopefully benefited by growth that happens in the future, depending on how well you're able to structure it, and it keeps the legal costs way down, which to do a Series A, if you're only going to raise $1 million, can actually chew up a meaningful percentage of that deal. So we ended up raising a seed round. We did $1.25 million from a handful of folks in New York, Silicon Valley, and a couple here in Philly. And thanks to our customers, we did this in about a week. So the people that started out investing with us, we had as customers at the time, Fab.com. Many of these are still customers. Fab.com. So CEO Jason Goldberg over there had told us at any point in time, like the second you guys are raising money, let me know. I want to put 100K in. There was Ben Lear, the CEO of Thrillist, who is also the partial namesake of Lear Ventures. Was a customer of ours, and Andy Dunn and Dave Eisenberg, who were key people at Bonobos, which is also a customer of ours, run Red Swan Ventures. So between just those firms and people that we called up and said, okay, we're ready to go, here are the convertible debt terms, we had our first 300 or 400K within an hour or so. And then it's just a matter of, some of these funds operate like SV Angel, which is an amazing fund but has an enormous portfolio, in some ways operates like an index fund of Silicon Valley. So once you've got a whole bunch of momentum, you're raising a bunch of money, and it's with other credible investors, if there's a small window left of, okay, we want to raise another 250K, calling best angel and saying, hey, here's this window, here's the velocity of the deal, here's the situation, here's who's backing it, a deal can get done really, really quickly. So we were able to make that happen, thankfully. And then, when you have more money to spend to grow faster, you grow faster, if you're lucky. So we grew the team, customer success got built out, got a first couple of sales reps, a lot of obnoxious press, which I have not always been the biggest fan of, but helps with recruiting a lot. But now, this whole golden handcuffs thing, which we had been afraid of at the venture firm, was like true for our own company. Our own company was suffering from golden handcuffs. And I think that was just a mindset change that we had to get comfortable with. Rolling us into 2013, at this point in time, I was still technically on the dev team. So I was committing code on a regular basis. I was a big part of not just the planning process and the code review process, but the actual contribution process. Because I love programming. It was super satisfying. Building a business has these really, really long feedback cycles, and you don't really know if you're successful or not. And sometimes you have really bad days, sometimes you have really good days. With programming, for me, you get these beautiful short feedback loops where you kind of you take a bite off, you write some code. If the code compiles well and it runs and the feature works, you send it to somebody and they're happy. You're solving fun puzzles. And to other people in the world, it's like you have magic powers. Like we have all these people in the company where they have, they're now in customer support and they just know something's not working. And then they can say, hey, what's the matter? And I can go clackety clack clack clack, fixed. And you feel like a superhero. But I had to come to this realization that real companies need actual executive leadership that are able to provide strategic value in addition to that kind of tactical value. So I started winding down my time spent as an engineer. And the other thing was that these engineers were all way, way, way better than me at engineering. So this is our engineering applicant funnel from, I think this is from probably 2010 to now. So we've had about 1,700 people apply for engineering jobs, and we've hired 25. And I would not have made it past this stage, honestly, if I was applying for an engineering job at RJ Metrics. So part of it was only the boldest people would tell me you should probably stop programming. We got this, but we had to, I kind of had to discover that for myself, and it wasn't until last year. So yeah, stop programming, start leading. These are my GitHub contributions along with some of our other big, you can just see over time the way that it kind of dwindles down, and now we're at a spot where it's rare. I still get involved with code reviews and product I'm still very involved with, but engineering, no. So we ended up raising a $5 million Series A in May 2013 because we kind of showed more evidence that we could spend money and keep those customer economics in check. Brought in VP Marketing, VP Sales, VP Customer Success. 2013 was a huge year. And getting a lot of press and a lot of key deals and just increasing the visibility of RJ Metrics as a brand. It was our biggest year ever. We were, that photo I think is about 40 people. And yeah, still super involved in product decisions. It's just a question of pushing. But I think me stopping spending the majority of my time on engineering and starting to focus on building and growing the business allowed us to do better as a business. And I don't think that that's something that you do when you're two people, but I do think that it is something that had I not done it, I'm not sure that we would have been able to do what we've done over the course of the last 2 years. So here we are in 2014. We're in this big market. It's growing really quickly. We had to change our mentality from we're this scrappy bootstrap startup, how are we going to make payroll next week, to something where it's how are we going to build a multi-billion-dollar company? And that is a really, really good question. And I think step one in that is you have to convince yourself mentally that you are going after the big win. And that is what we are doing over at RJ Metrics. And we've doubled our staff from 40 at the beginning of this year to we're now at 85. We moved from a 3,000 square foot space on Walnut Street to a 13,000 square foot space on Chestnut Street, which we are now out of space in. And we raised a $16.5 million Series B actually just a couple of weeks ago, I guess now, a month and a half ago from August Capital, which we haven't even started to deploy yet. All on the backs of a lot of that unit economics driven SaaS logic in addition to the market that we're in and things like that. And yeah, we are just swinging the bat really hard. So if you look at all of these decisions individually, it's like this feels like a real fun, like a glorified story. But a lot of these are just like either bad decisions or ones that ate time. Like no decision to me is like a bad one. There are ones in here that like, okay, this thing where I made $0 working for my dorm room for all of my senior year to design this thing. Think about like how I felt in the moment of getting the email that I'm literally going to get no money for this. But in retrospect, having gone through that experience probably helped me get the job at Insight. It was my first contract negotiation. I got to experience some of that. A lot of this stuff that was just absolutely terrifying at the time, like paying other people before paying myself, for example, when I had no money to begin with, has ended up working out well, but I think in the moment was absolutely terrifying. And I think that's what I walk away from is like, if I'm not doing something that is at least in some small way terrifying at any given moment in growing the business, then it's probably not capturing on the correct risk-reward ratio. So yeah, take risks. Really being selfish about personal growth, I think is something that I'm very big on, and I even encourage everybody who works on the team at RJ Metrics to do the same. Where if you have these opportunities that are going to challenge you and push you and potentially allow you to fail, I think that's the right thing to do, particularly at a point in a career where you have the opportunity to think about entrepreneurship. So, that's it. So that's me. That's RJ. Please definitely give us a follow. We're hiring like crazy. We would love to have more great minds with us. So please check out rjmetrics.com/jobs too. How'd I do?
We good. 10 minutes over, but.
Yes. All right. Let me get my tea here.
Tell us what you do or what makes you special, what your mom loves about you, and then answer your questions. So who wants to go first?
Hi, I'm Bob Savino, CTO of Moving. You said you went after the long tail vertical. What is the vertical you went after?
So anybody who sells anything on the internet. So e-commerce, software as a service, marketplaces, travel, and mobile. So it's a pretty... It feels very horizontal, but when you start getting into the world of retail, for example, online retail, despite being $1 trillion industry, is still a very, very small fraction of overall retail sales. So within that category, it's relatively specialized and considered to be vertically focused. You can even get into like verticals within the verticals. So within e-commerce, we sell to a lot of apparel companies. We sell... a lot of like subscription-based commerce businesses, so something of the month club. Anybody who's got customers who come back and buy more than once is great for us because we talk a lot about customer lifetime value, cohort analysis, customer loyalty, and retention. So if you're selling dog food, like Pet360 is a client, they just got bought by PetSmart. Perfect example of a client for us. So their customers keep coming back and they want to optimize that. Jake has tried to sell pooltables.com like 10 times unsuccessfully because once you buy a pool table, you're pretty much done buying pool tables for a while. So it's that's kind of where we draw the line. Yeah.
So as an
In-house rule?
I'm sorry, Mike Gutman, Wall Street Labs. As an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, you spent a fairly long time in engineering.
Yeah.
How does that impact how you act as a CEO, even though you've made a decision of shifting?
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse. I think you will encounter some CEOs that are very, very successful because of what they don't know. There are a lot of, you kind of need to be a little crazy and delusional to start a company in the first place. And I think in a lot of cases that delusion is actually rooted in ignorance. So you'll find CEOs who just do that thing which, Steve Jobs is famous for, which is, here, this is as good and as tight as this circuit board can possibly get. And he looks at it, doesn't necessarily have a full appreciation of what's going on in there and says, it sucks, make it better. And I think that element actually is really beneficial to a lot of CEO profiles. And in engineering, it's a little bit of a liability for me to be able to understand how damn hard some of this stuff is that I'm asking for. I worry sometimes that it's almost like, am I taking it too easy on the development team relative to the experience they would have at another company by being so empathetic about how extremely challenging all this stuff we're building is. So I think there's a little bit of, you need to separate the developer empathy from the need to be competitive in the marketplace. But I think it also makes it easier for me to create a workplace environment that doesn't suck. And I think that it's not a black and white kind of issue, but I think being able to understand what is probably the most technically complex and hardest to relate to role that exists within our organization, that's also the largest team within our organization, I think is extremely powerful for me as a leader from a cultural perspective. So having kind of like come up through the ranks with the engineering team, being able to talk shop as people are sitting at the lunch table and talking about the abstract historical derivative profiler file, being able to say, oh yeah, I think I wrote that thing back in 2009, and then getting yelled at because it's a piece of crap. All of those things, it's kind of part of the camaraderie there. So there's probably a more like existential answer to your question that's probably more interesting, but I have to think harder to articulate it well. But I think there are those tactical examples actually do matter in a big way. I think it makes a big difference culturally, and I think it forces me to push myself as a person who demands excellence from everyone, even though I know how hard it is to be excellent in a lot of these ways. Yep.
Hey, I'm Dan Lawson, local entrepreneur. We actually exchanged emails yesterday, so I'm
Dan, yeah. Let's go.
So I'm curious about like the kind of 14-day trial period that you have with your customers. I mean, what happens kind of during those 14 days that you're able to set the hook? And it being that it sounds like you're very like an outward effort kind of company in regard to your sales team. I would assume that your service level agreements with each one of your customers is probably different. Is there like a qualifying process that you have to go through to?
Yeah, so we live in this really interesting spot from a price point perspective where we're not priced expensively enough that we do a lot of like custom SLA negotiation or anything like that. Most of our customers have a relatively cookie cutter set. I mean, our pricing is like public on our website. And it's like you get this for this, you get that for that. And also interestingly, our outbound sales team is relatively new, and to this day, more than 50% of the new business we get is actually from inbound marketing. So our content marketing, white papers, webinars, blog posts, speaking engagements, all microsites, all these different things we do to make ourselves visible when it comes to the mind space around the things that we want to be a part of, bring in a boatload of leads, and we really optimize around the conversion funnel process. So to the first part of your question around what happens during the 14-day free trial, that is probably one of the things that is most in flux at our company today because we are constantly trying to optimize around the conversion rate. We've got it right now where 65% of people who enter the free trial end up converting to paid, which is an insanely high number, but we're kind of cheating because they need to do a little bit of work up front in order to even experience the free trial. So there's an implementation period that takes about 1 day worth of work on our side to get done, where data gets connected, we run some automated things that detect all these patterns within the data and then generate the dashboards automatically. Account managers will do a training call with one or more people there. And then in that 14-day period, that's what we're experimenting with right now. Like we've got a bunch of A/B tests going on actually, where some clients get full-blown. You get like 10 dashboards on day one, and it's like analysis paralysis mode where you're just getting slammed with all these charts. Some people get nothing, and it's a walkthrough that says here's how you're going to build your first chart. And some people get one. We ask them what's the one most important question you want to answer with your data, and we walk them through building that with them. So we're going through all these things. Everything is centered around, in that 14-day period, it's more about a proof of concept than it is a fully functioning implementation, because an implementation with something like this is like a living, breathing thing. You get a new data source, you got to connect it, you incorporate everything in. So we want to get them into the workflow of being an RJ Metrics customer, but not necessarily on autopilot, because you're never really truly on autopilot when it comes to your business's data. Yeah, in the back.
My name's Liam Lieberman. I'm a filmmaker.
Cool.
You're talking about culture. What's the key elements of your company's culture?
We are a meritocracy of nerds. That means the best ideas win, and everybody's really smart. And I think that those two things coming together are what makes it a really excellent place to work. But we've got you pick your startup stereotype in terms of office environment, right? We got the ping pong table, we got the nap room, there's beanbag chairs everywhere. None of that crap matters. Those are outputs, not inputs to culture. And the inputs for us are that we don't hire people who are not intellectually honest, who cannot admit when they are wrong about something and be excited about being proven right and actually changing their position. That's a big part of what we screen for in the interview process. And you get a bunch of those people together that are also very smart and very passionate about the particular problems that we're working on. And you create an environment where you're able to make really productive progress and not lose time on all the trappings of big companies with all these potential lines of communication that can muck other things up. So it's got to be comfortable and an awesome place to work, but I think also it's got to be intellectually challenging, and people need to be inspired by what they're doing day in and day out. And that all just boils down to people for me. So we don't hire assholes, and we tend to hire people that are very motivated and intellectually honest.
Quick Nucci is really big on that, not hiring assholes. He wrote this whole thing about it.
Yeah, it's a trend.
Over behind Denny, new case.
Yeah, Philip,
Hi, Philip.
statistician.
Great.
Can you talk a little bit about the different investment option you mentioned about? I saw the slides has Series A, Series B.
Yeah.
And would that be reaching a point that may hurt ability to control the business?
Oh yeah. So one of the things where having worked at a venture capital firm ends up proving beneficial. I personally negotiated every one of these deals that we got done. We work with an awesome law firm, Lowenstein Sandler, who's been instrumental in kind of how the docs fold out. But it's been very, very important for myself and Jake to be able to have a say over the direction of the company in a really meaningful way. And we worked for 18 months without salary, and then another 18 months at effectively minimum wage before we were able to actually pay ourselves well in this business. And what we got in exchange for that sweat was equity, not having been diluted by raising money early on so that we could pay ourselves a decent paycheck. So when we've been able to raise money in each one of these subsequent rounds, it has not been such a big piece of the pie that it's been debilitating to our ability to set the vision of the company. And I think the other part is just choosing your partners. It's been flattering to have experiences where we don't have to go with the one firm that was interested. Where we get to talk to firms that are excited about the idea and actually learn through reference calls and through case studies and through back channel references who actually is a pro-entrepreneur investor. There are investors that have more of a pattern of plucking out the CEO and putting a quote-unquote pro in there. And there are some that back companies because they want to back the teams and because they want to back the people. And we've been very careful to partner with folks that are very centered around cultivating entrepreneurs. And you can look for firms that invest in the same people over and over again. So it's like a deal gets done, a guy starts a company and sells it, or maybe it fails, and then their next company, the same firm backs them. Those are the kinds of data points that are really important.
Let's do one more and then we can talk after.
Yeah, David Drocko, investment banker / teacher. Question for you.
Cool.
You made the comment that you initially priced your product too low.
Uh-huh.
How did you come up with your initial price, and then what you've learned since then? How should you have priced your product?
Jake had this big dartboard, and he would just throw cards along. It really was that. I mean, our first customer we ever signed up was paying $200 a month. The next one we signed up paid $50 a month. The next one we signed up paid $500 a month. The next one we signed up paid $1,500 a month, all for the same exact product. We strive to achieve true value-based pricing where it's perfectly efficient and we're capturing every dollar of value that we end up delivering. It's really, really, really hard. Today, if you were to look at my inbox, you'll see a bunch of things. We're currently looking at restructuring our pricing yet again. There are a lot of different axes by which our pricing is built out at this point, and a lot of them are still kind of in flux as to how the tiers shake out. I think we were fortunate to have Jake, who was an animal on the phone and was really good at getting conversations about pricing under his belt. and just kind of learning where people jumped and said yes, where people puked and walked away, and where people were like, "Oh, that's a lot of money, but okay," because like that's what you're looking for. And the range that we're in right now, which is our customers pay anywhere from $500 to $5,000 per month, depending on the size of their business, has proven to be the sweet spot. Although we've been drifting higher as time has gone on.
How do you price? By what tier?
Currently, it is based on how many customers our clients have, and the reason that we do it that way is it used to be the most proportional, like the thing that would be most proportional to our cost of goods sold, like our hosting costs, would be if we charge based on how much data they have. So we used to price based on how many rows they had in all the database tables they wanted in the warehouse, and it became an impediment in the sales process because no one knows how many rows they have in the database, even like the engineers. So they'd be like, all right, let me go run 40 SQL queries and add them all up, and I'll come back and get back to you. And then 4 weeks later, somebody shows up, and by that time their database is twice as big. So we found that the number of customers is not only a good proxy for how much data there is, it's also a great proxy for how well the business is actually doing, and therefore the actual like value proportions that we want to have in line with our pricing.
And that's intuitive for your clients to understand.
They all know how many customers they've got. Yeah.
No, but the pricing is intuitive for them, and do you get pushback on that formula for pricing, or do you not?
Not particularly. There are weird cases where you imagine like one of those subscription commerce businesses where maybe you've got 20,000 customers that are subscribers, but then you've got an email list of 1 million customers who love your content, and you want to pull in those 1 million people and analyze all their interactions with your site. Like, are those customers or are they not? Like, that's the difference between you needing to pay us $500 and $5,000 is whether you have 20,000 or 1 million customers. So that's the emails in my inbox are about that. And I think like those little things, and SaaS businesses too, where e-commerce, you might have 1 million customers that paid you $40 last year. SaaS, you might have 40 customers that paid you $1 million last year. So a company with the same revenue is getting charged 10x difference based on that current pricing breakdown. So our pricing is constantly seeking greater efficiency, and I think that'll continue.
Last question, any programs for startups that use your tool?
Yeah, we have, there's a little thing at the bottom of our pricing page around like preferential pricing for startups. Our starting price is, relative to every other true cloud BI platform out there, is a fraction of what you could get it for elsewhere. So we're implicitly very startup friendly, and by pushing down the tail, I've kind of cracked open a lot more of the startup market than I think any other BI company has been able to do. That said, if it's like someone who's even earlier stage than that, depending on the situation, we'd rather have the conversation than not have it to figure out how to make something work.
And who are your competitors? Top 3?
I'd say Good Data. There's a company called Burst, and there's a pocket of companies like Tableau Software that I think are indirect competitors where they compete kind of for mind share, but not necessarily directly based on what their technology looks like. They're a visualization platform, but you kind of need to have your data warehouse figured out in order to do that. We do the data warehouse plus the visualization, so once a customer starts really digging into what they need, it's a really clear choice, but in a lot of cases, we'll get people ripping out Tableau for us, and if people build their data warehouse internally, Tableau will beat us in a sales process because they don't need our data warehouse piece. So it's really just the market is kind of fragmented across that property, but there's a boatload of customers on both sides of that chasm.
Before we break, I know there's a couple of startups in-house. I know Movin is here. I know Mongoose is here. And I know Stash is here. And I know... Ryan? You have a... What's that?
Sure, it's like, I wouldn't call it a startup.
Okay. Tech company. Who's the Jonathan? FaceCrunch?
Yep.
And Birdwall. Got a lot of players. Chad, in or out?
Sure.
So lots of conversations. Thanks. Let's give Bob a round of applause.
Thanks, everybody.
Compelling story, but also instructional. So really awesome. Feel free to hang